Hi, Ron. Hoops are here with another England post-match reaction. Of course, England 2, Slovakia 1, an absolutely ridiculous match yesterday afternoon. And normally it'd be just myself, but I needed someone else to discuss this weird and wonderful result with. So today I'm joined by James Paterson of West London Sport. How are you doing, James?
Yeah, good. Thank you. Good to see you.
You too, you too. And what are you making of yesterday? Have you gotten over that ridiculous end to the match?
Yeah, I mean, just about kind of like finished consuming every little piece of content that I can find and watched all the highlights over many times. But yeah, I was very much like preparing to have like a pretty sad walk home with my mum and dad, and then somehow something happened, something incredible and ridiculous. And yeah, it was incredible. It was a great ending to the game.
Yeah, it made that painful 90 minutes worth it in the end, didn't it?
For sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's start from the beginning then. Obviously, going into this match, England were favourites. The feeling was that we'd got a fairly generous draw with this, given that we'd expected to be playing the Netherlands. Obviously, still was going to be a tough match, given Slovakia have made it through to the round of 16, but feeling optimistic about our chances. But the first half didn't really play out like that, did it?
No, not at all. I mean, it felt like that we were just giving them way too much respect. They seemed so much better than I guess like we were. We seemed to be quite nervous, making lots of errors. Like the error leading up to their first goal just seemed to be a miscommunication between like Gehi and Stones, where they were both trying to head it at the same time and not really talking, and then it just
Yeah.
knocked through, and we were just picked apart way too easily. And I think that one of the most noticeable things is that there's not really much cohesion and movement in the team, and something about like the midfield being so far up the pitch, or the attackers, and then Declan Rice and Mainoo being sat in front of the defence so deeply meant that we just couldn't really progress the ball up. So yeah, it was a hard watch.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. I mean, there's two things you said there that I thought were interesting. One was that we showed them too much respect. In some senses, I almost thought it was the opposite. It was almost like
Hmm.
we thought it's just Slovakia, we'll get
Yeah.
goals, it'll come, and gave them a little bit too much room at the back because the defense were all over the place in that first half,
Mm.
particularly around the
Mm.
goal. And you mentioned that lack of cohesion as well. That back pass from Trippier about 2 minutes into Gahey, which of course forced him to stop a man running straight through, got him a yellow card, means he'll now
Mm.
miss the quarterfinal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that lack of cohesion is starting to cost us now, despite making it through to the next round.
There's something about like Walker's performance as well. I thought Walker had like such a hard game.
Yeah,
Was it Walker who did the like bad pass to Stones when Stones wasn't watching, and then they had the long shot? There were
yeah,
just like errors like that that just seemed to be happening like all over the pitch, and but especially from that back right position. Yeah, it was a really hard watch, and things just didn't really improve that much when we went into the second half as well. I was just surprised at how long the kind of like the misery and the pain just kind of continued throughout the game.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it really did just feel as the match went on and on that it was going to be just one of those days. The lack of of team spirit and it not gelling was catching up with us, and we were going to be caught out with this result.
Mm.
Obviously, Declan Rice hit the post. But save for that, I really can't remember a big effort in this match in either half until that equaliser came.
Mm.
So there's still a problem with our sort of creativity in and around the box. We're still, it's backwards, sideways, isn't it? I mean, players like Harry Kane have got a lot of criticism over the last few for not putting in the performances that he's done for Bayern this season and, dropping deep or not making any runs. But I sort of was wondering what he was supposed to do yesterday when we could barely get the ball out of our own half,
Mm.
And I think there was one actually that he put in that excellent ball. I don't know if it was in the first or the second half. Put in a really good cross into the box for Saka. It just went over his head and he couldn't reach it. And you thought he's killing for somebody to put that ball in the box for him, and he's just not getting that delivery.
He had that delivery from, was it the dead ball situation from Foden,
Mm,
where Foden was out on the left wing, free kick, crossed it in, and it kind of like landed just slightly behind his run, so he didn't quite time his run well. But then I think he kind of like knocked it just past the near post, and usually that's just kind of like bread and butter for him in
yeah.
Bayern. So I was kind of surprised to see that happen. But I mean, I don't think Kane particularly had like a bad game. He was like holding his position further up the pitch, which people were asking for a lot more.
Yeah.
He was also, I mean, he was getting about, he was pressing where he needed to, but I think that's just not really his game to have that engage in that high press. And it seemed like none of the team were really doing that throughout. So it'd be strange if he was doing that on his own.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
that's
but
true.
yeah, a mixed performance really from him. But I don't think he was the main sort of issue in that.
Mm. And what did you make of Kobbie Mainoo? Because obviously we've been toiling away throughout this tournament of trying to solve this midfield issue, who partners up with Declan Rice. And
Mm.
very much got the sense one of the few positives in the Slovenia match was Mainoo coming on in that second half, and he looked a lot more comfortable there. What did you make of his performance yesterday?
I thought he was pretty decent. I think he was solid. He was kind of like he was getting the ball and being able to like progress it up the pitch more than we had done with Gallagher and Trent. I think initially I was finding that he was had some really positive moves, but then the kind of the weird energy that was hanging over the squad and I guess the way that we were playing started to impact him, and then I feel like I saw a few sort of misplaced passes from him, and I think he was definitely like, I think we have probably worked out that he's going to be the starter moving forward,
Mm.
because he does offer that control and can kind of progress the ball up the pitch, but we weren't seeing him to at his best at all. But yeah, I think it's an energy thing. I think that the energy kind of like was really low and
Yeah.
our heads were down in a way where everyone was kind of starting to look bad. But yeah, I think Mainoo's definitely one of the better sort of players for us at the moment. So I feel pretty positive about him starting for us moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're right about the energy thing. I think it was rubbing off of all of them. And I think that was why, the substitutions were so important. Obviously,
Mm.
Cole Palmer coming on first. And he finally shuffled the pack a little bit on the formation with Saka then switching over to left back, which, Saka had talked about in the press earlier in the week with, Ian Wright suggested it. And Saka basically said, I don't think that's the solution, but let's see what happens. And Southgate's taken note and actually put him at left back. And I actually thought he looked a lot more balanced with him playing there. I didn't think he looked out
Yeah.
of place at all. And it meant that Palmer could get on the pitch too.
Yeah, to be fair, I liked it as well. Like, it was really nice to see someone there, and we were kind of utilizing that left wing like a little bit more
Mm.
than we had been previously. But I mean, I really don't think that Southgate would have planned to have done that. I don't even think he's like necessarily picked up on other people even saying that. It's literally just because Trippier had that injury that he was kind of forced because we're so short on people to play in that area. And then with Eze playing in left back as well, and he made a crucial sort of
Yeah.
half block at the end of the game to keep it to 2-1, which was so impressive. But yeah, I love to see it. I mean, it's been widely reported and spoken about on all the podcasts and all the media that the left wing is a massive problem area for us because we've got no sort of ability and speed to drive down the left and then to cut it back in. And we've got players that have good left feet, so we need to personally, I feel like we should start using them with the likes of Gordon and maybe even Saka and left back. But yeah, that was positive. That was definitely a positive to take from the first.
Yeah, I mean, it was a nice surprise. Like you said, whether it was intended or not before the match that was going to be an option, given it came through injury, who knows?
Mm.
But we looked a lot more positive. We looked a lot more balanced. And then, yeah, the other substitutions I found really interesting too, because Eze got back onto the pitch for the first time since the Denmark match, which admittedly I really didn't think was going to happen after that. I think all of the subs that came on in that match found it really hard to impact that game. And it made me think that, particularly for Eze, they were kind of thinking, no, he's not one to use, especially with Gordon coming on the left in the last game. But the sort of pecking order of things changed slightly because the same happened for Watkins, right? You had Eze come on instead of Gordon, and then you had Toney come on in that last kind of shit or bust moment, when actually it seemed like Watkins was the deputy striker to come on. And, threw Toney on. Southgate's talked about the fact that he was pretty fuming with him, but it worked. It caused a bit of chaos, and
Mm.
in that final moment, he's caught. I thought he had a really impressive performance, Toney. Actually, he was causing a lot of problems in the box. He was winning all of his duels.
I do think that, yeah, I think it makes sense. I think it's good that he was hungry. It's good that he was angry that he hadn't been starting. I think that's great. That's definitely something that I think if Southgate was a bit more confident and a bit more bold with his sort of substitutions and starting lineups. I think he could utilize that style or that way of like picking someone else first and bring them on a little bit later. But one of the main things that I was thinking and kind of noted down whilst I was watching the game is that it seemed like Southgate had just kind of frozen. Like he wasn't sure what to do, didn't want to take any risks. We're just stuck with what we had because even up until that 90th minute, like the play was it was hard to watch. Everyone was struggling to watch it. I mean, Slovakia were playing good football. They were pressing well. They moved the ball better than we did throughout the first 90. Um, but still, he just seemed to kind of like freeze up. I don't know if you noticed, if you felt that as well, because we've clearly got so much attacking power on the bench, and you've got these players that can really run at them and stretch the game and change the way that we play so much. Because if Slovakia are prepared work to work against the likes of Foden, Bellingham, Kane, and Saka, and then suddenly if you can mix it up and bring on like Palmer, Gordon on the left, like all these different players, I feel like he just froze. What do you think? Do you think he did that?
Yeah, I think there was a bit of that. I think there were. I don't think he really had a plan B for this game. I don't, and I think you're right. I don't know if he knew how to solve it. And ultimately, the goal that came for the equaliser was us resorting to playing long balls and direct balls into the box. I mean, the equaliser comes from a long throw, which, we've seen another manager called Gareth instill that at our beloved QPR to
Mhm.
varying degrees of success. But, we basically went as direct as possible and then it worked. And
Mhm.
that's what's going to be interesting, in the aftermath of this now is we've pretty much won it in spite of what Southgate's plan was and in spite of that initial starting 11 that he picked. And so there's now, even bigger questions around who the starting personnel is going forwards, how we utilize some of those players going into the next game, because, you know, like we say, Toney caused a lot of problems. Do we want to have to wait till the 90th minute to see him come on again in the next one? Really, I
Yeah,
think
no.
we need to take some of these learnings and use them quickly.
Yeah, that's because I was watching the game with my mum and dad, both sort of diehard QPR fans, and that's the main thing that we were saying. It was like watching Gareth Ainsworth's team in the early, what like the Watford games, the early games in the last season, where we just seemed to have like such a low intensity, but also like low team IQ. It seemed like that we weren't able to, or like smart enough to be able to pass through the lines, find the triangles, and it
No
was
one
this
could read each
sort of
other.
long ball. Yeah, they
Yeah.
couldn't read each other, and they weren't like running for each other. There was like a distinct lack in motivation as well amongst. Well, no, actually, no, you can't knock them for not wanting to win the game. They clearly like care a lot, but there was just no less fight really.
Mm.
But yeah, loads of sort of reminders to how bad football can be with the kind of archaic long balls, like you say. Just passing it between the back four. We were so used to that with Ainsworth having like the passing from the left wing back to the centre, over to the
Yeah.
right wing back to the centre, back to the keeper, knock it long, and that's what seemed to be happening so much. Um, but yeah, that was a really hard watch, and yeah, of course, it happened to be that a long throw into the box from Kyle Walker, and then I think Saka did Saka head it on over the back.
Gay did it on, yeah.
Oh, did he? And then yeah, that was just absolutely ridiculous. We were in a pub yesterday, and I think we were just preparing to go for like this long walk home and talk about how terrible it's going to be for Southgate. I was actually going to say, I feel like I've somewhat fearing for like his safety, but also just like the reaction of the fans and the country. Like he's going to be so like just torn apart by the media. And then that happened, and basically his kind of legacy for England was saved in that moment. And now he has another chance to try and right some of the wrongs from this competition.
Well, this is it. And, the goal for Jude Bellingham to score after, a pretty poor performance himself, to pull that out in that moment, that takes some balls.
Mm.
That could have really gone wrong. They could have gone into row Z. And
Yeah,
he,
totally.
and he had the bottle to do it. And, it worked. It was the moment that we need. And that's
Mm.
what that's what some of these players can bring you. They can have a bad 90 minutes and pull out a moment like that. Kane obviously did it for the winner as well. Obviously going into extra time, there was that momentum with us then. And I feel like that equaliser settled Kane down a little bit and he sort of went, I'm going to put one in now. And,
Mm.
it was the sort of confidence that he needed.
Yeah.
But like I say, the these players are, we've got world-class players in this team, and they were world-class moments. We finally saw a couple of them. And, they always say, if you can't play well, then be lucky. And there was a degree of luck there. But sometimes you do need that. And could this be something that galvanizes them now into the next game? Does this help them turn the corner on what have been some really awkward performances? What do you think?
I think so. Apparently, from hearing some of the post-match interviews and stuff, it seems like there's a complete energy shift. But I mean, naturally, you would do like scoring a late goal to stay in it, and then a late winner. Like the energy is going to be completely different now. Like now that it's knockout football. I just can't really see this being a turning point though. It was, as much as I'd like to be positive and excited about the next game, I just think that we're coming up against some really organised opposition that's going to be much more sort of slick. And it's mad to even like consider the fact that we're going into this as underdogs. Because I think we are, despite still being the favourites in the competition. I think one of my colleagues was saying this morning that we are still like the bookies' favourites. But yeah, I just don't. I think it could offer them some unity and a bit more fight. But if you don't have that tactical nous, and if you haven't got the right sort of manager at the helm driving the kind of the proper training processes and all of the preparation that goes into the games, I can't see it improving that much. One thing I was going to say before I forget, I did hear that apparently Jude Bellingham had scored 6 goals in extra time this season, and all of them ended in there being like a change in the outcome, whether it be like a loss to a draw or a draw to a win, which is just huge. It's just why you have like these. We're so lucky to have like the best sort of world-class talent in European football, I guess.
Well, and to be doing that at the age of 21, not just
Mm.
once, but 6+ times in the season is ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, interesting you say about us potentially going into this as underdogs now against Switzerland, because obviously they have been incredibly organised and they are not a team that are going to be fearful of playing England at all. Does it help us a little bit going into it as underdogs? Has that been part of the problem in the matches so far? We had one of the most generous groups that you could have going into an international tournament. And like I said, with that attitude yesterday against Slovakia, there's a little bit of a kind of, we're too good for this lot. And now that we're actually coming up against a side that maybe we should fear a little bit, maybe that will take a little bit of the pressure off.
It's interesting. So I didn't really see that energy from them where they thought they were too good for this lot. I just saw a team that was like underprepared, that didn't have that cohesion, and it just made me think like, oh wow, like if you don't have that unity and you don't have the ability to kind of like work well for each other, but in a way where you can outsmart the opponent, I feel like they looked like nervous and edgy and unconfident. Like it's not like I guess we did give them the respect in that like we should have just pummeled them, and we should have come out of the blocks and just kept on going and going and going and tried to score as many goals. But it's just not Southgate's sort of style of play. Like he wants to get that goal and then sit back. And I think, yeah, maybe going into the next game, maybe there's some motivation and some momentum to be taken from that outcome. But yeah, let's see. I'm really not sure about that. I'm still nervous.
And as you said, it even if there has been a shift in that mentality, it still comes down to Southgate to get this next selection right. We can't go into this with the same game plan that we went in yesterday because,
Hmm.
as I said, we won the game in spite of that plan and in spite of those starting 11 players that he picked. He now has to make some really bold calls for the next game. Like you said, if Trippier is not fit for next weekend, is it does Saka stay there? Does he bring in another defender that's potentially not touched the ball this tournament? I mean, obviously we saw Konsa come in the second half of extra time yesterday. Pretty important for him to get some minutes into his legs, given he's likely going to be replacing Gahey with his suspension. But like I say, if you don't put Saka there, you're potentially putting in another defender that hasn't even touched the ball.
I think I think a lot of us would like to see Saka there. It would be such a bold move, but I just don't see him ever making a bold move like that. His hand was forced yesterday, so that's why Saka went back. But I think Konsa will probably come in. But then you've got the question of who's going to replace Gahey, I guess. So
Yeah, but on the flip side,
well,
his hand was forced, but we saw it in the previous game when he brought on Trent Arnold and then he pushed Walker over to left back. He could have
Mm.
easily done that, and he didn't. So it's just interesting to, what will he do for the next game?
Yeah, yeah. I feel like his sort of style is to do with defensive solidity. So he's just going to pack the defense with defenders. And I obviously, Saka, when he was started playing for Arsenal, I think he was a left back, and the same again for England. I think when he broke into the team, he was a left back as well. I think he'll probably, I think he'll probably put on like maybe a Joe Gomez in centre back, and then Konsa in left back, and keep Saka where he is, keep Foden where he is, keep Bellingham where he is. And
Mm.
unfortunately, I think it will just be the plain old same move.
And this is the thing because Saka playing at left back is almost the enabler to get these attacking players on the pitch that we want to see. And like you say, if he's not a left back and he's starting on the right wing, then Palmer can't get on the pitch. And yeah, I mean, Foden's another interesting one. I think yet again another pretty underwhelming performance from him. The corner deliveries were frustrating to no end. Could either not beat a man or just put it straight into the keeper's hands. I think he's had enough games now to really warrant someone else starting in his place. But if he sets them up in the exact same starting order, then I think this could be our exit.
I think he would. Two things. So with the kind of set piece deliveries, again, Ainsworth style, just kind of knock it in to the 6 yard box, and then we just find the same thing that would happen where you wouldn't really see any of our players anyway, get on the end of it, which could be due to like bad delivery, but I think it's probably just due to lack of sort of drive to get in front of the ball to outmuscle your man. And then the other piece was I mean, Gordon is everyone's calling out for Gordon to offer that width there. Um, I was going to ask you like why you think he still hasn't been included because he had that fall off his bike in the week where he had a grazed chin but he was saying that he's fit enough and ready to go. I just feel like that left wing needs that, and everyone's saying it. Like everyone's saying that we need that width and the speed. So, do you
Well, that's
think?
what I found interesting about, like I said, about the sort of shifting of the pecking order because Gordon was in the last game, but then Eze came on for this one in his place. And like you said, whether that's due to the bike accident earlier in the week, I think it was probably a tactical decision because he brought Eze on and I think he wanted somebody who can control the ball at his feet and carry it in. Not that Gordon can't do that, but like you said, the plus of Gordon is the pace that he offers. Maybe he thought that's not what we need right now. We don't need someone who's going to run at him down the channel. We need someone who's going to head to the box. And then you saw that with Eze going for that shot that deflected, which eventually led to the Kane goal. So maybe it was just a situational thing as opposed to, Gordon's not going to get another look in.
So Eze was brought on for Mainoo on the I think 84th minute, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Whereabouts was it that Eze actually? Because I remember him being in the left back, but then he was also progressing on the left wing a little bit. So where do you think he was
Yeah,
actually playing?
I think he was essentially supposed to be the left winger, but and he sort of filled that central space in place of Mainu. I think he was basically forced into being an additional defender once we went 2-1 up because you saw it in that second half, right? It's not something we've talked about yet, but we did retreat back into our own box completely and it was
Yeah.
right back to the wall now. So Eze did become an extension of that back line, but I don't think he would have brought him on with that necessarily in mind at first.
Mm,
But once we got the goal, it's like, backs to the wall.
yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting when we come up against better opposition, isn't it? Because they're just going to be able to like pass through us and find our weaknesses much better than the likes of Slovenia and Slovakia and all of these
I,
others.
and the other thing Switzerland have is that relentless press and work rate and energy, which, we're not going to be able to sit back and just try and shut people out and idly pass the ball around the back. They're going to shut us down. So it's one thing I thought we've really lacked so far is that energy and that intensity in the press. And we're going to have to try and match those energy levels
You
because
think that's because that's a tactical thing that Southgate is trying to implement, where he doesn't want us to like lose our energy too much. He wants us to conserve our energy, or
I think so. I think it's a bit of that. I think he wants to pass the ball around the back, let the other team tire themselves out and try and win every game 1-0. But
mm,
yeah, but I that plan will not work against Switzerland.
Absolutely not. Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. And they've got like what the concerning thing as well is I don't know too much about their attack, but we recognise the likes of Akanji and Shah in defence, which is just a completely different level to the defenders that we've been playing up against recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. What are your thoughts going into it?
I really don't know what to think, to be honest. I mean, like I say, I hope that there is some element of momentum from this game. And for Southgate in particular, a lifeline. He really would have thought, I imagine, 30 seconds before Bellingham's goal that that's it. That's my last England match ever. So I really hope that that's given him the kind of will to take some more risks because he took the risks at the end of the game and it paid off. I'm not saying you have to start with all of those players at the beginning of the match, but some adjustment to the game plan needs to be made. I do think us being the underdogs is actually potentially going to help us. It's just too hard to call though. I think it's just going to be another incredibly cagey game. I think at this point I'll probably say penalties. I could see
Okay.
it being slugged out to that point. What do you think?
I think I always get really excited just before the game. And I'm like, maybe this is the time. This is the time where it clicks. And there were some moments in that game where you could see where it did click, and you could see that I think it was for the disallowed goal. There was so much there was a 4 or 5 like small passes breaking through the lines down the left wing. Trippier crosses it in, and I was like, okay, that's the potential there. That's how we can play.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't know. They've got a long time to rest now. They've got, what is it, 6 days, 5 days from now. So you'd have thought that's plenty of time to work on some set pieces, work on like the drills, be able to be prepared and be ready to go again. We just haven't seen anything positive going into it. So I think the positive side of me is going to say extra time, penalties, probably lose. But the negative is like, I think we might just become unstuck, and Switzerland might prove to be too organised for us. And if we go into it with the mentality that you'd mentioned before about how we gave them too much respect. No, I actually said that. If we go into it like in the way that we have been playing with the kind of lack of intensity, I think that will just be picked apart, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I think that mindset at the very least is going to shift because I think all of them are going to be shocked that they're still in the competition. So I think I think the lack of respect that I personally think that we've shown some of these sides will probably disappear now. But it does come down to, can we get the cohesion into this team? All these underhit passes and no one looking at you. You mentioned Walker doing it on that free kick and Pickford nearly gets chipped off the back of it. That how do we stop that? Well, why is that happening? Because like you say, a better team, we're going to punish you with those kind of moments. So yeah, I think more respect will come into it, but yeah, can we play against a good side? Historically, under Southgate, when we come against the good sides, we tend to lose, right? So this is his biggest match, really. It's this biggest test.
Do you know when the last time was that we played Switzerland? I can't personally remember.
No,
Was it a while ago?
yeah, it's definitely a while ago.
Yeah, I think ranking wise, they must be like a bit further up in like the top 20 or something. But yeah, I guess they're not considered to be a top side, but they seem to be in this competition one of like the outstanding performers in terms of like surprising a lot of teams and being well drilled and all of that sort of stuff. So, and they looked amazing in the last game as well.
Well, this is it. They're just not. They're fearless. They're not worried about playing the supposedly better sides. And they'll be rubbing their hands together, despite the fact that we got through that first 90 minutes. They'll be thinking we can definitely beat this lot. So yeah, they're going to go for it. They're going to be all in.
I think so. I think so for sure. It was Italy that they played at the last game, wasn't it? Where they won 2-0 and Italy looked weak and they looked really, really poor. But to be fair, I think that's also probably a sign that Switzerland were well drilled and able to kind of like hold them off. And
Yeah, yeah. I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I think Italy have been quite poor. I wasn't expecting much from them going into this tournament. They obviously scraped through into one of those top two spaces with that equaliser against Croatia at the death with just a moment of brilliance. But yeah, come up against a better side and couldn't produce those kind of moments. And yeah, that's the perfect warning for us, right? You know, they will do that to you if you allow them to. So
the last time we played them was actually in March of 2022, where we won 2-1, I think, in just a friendly. So yeah, and then before that there was like I think penalties in a Nations League A championship playoff, but like no one really remembers those. But yeah, I think we've got a decent chance, but yeah, let's see.
yeah, it's going to be a nervy week. Okay, well, to round off, let's go with what would your ideal starting 11 be off of the back of yesterday?
I would say Pickford, Saka left back, gonna go bold. Saka left back, and then probably Konsa, Stones. We've got to keep Walker in, despite like the poor game. Keep the same two in front of the defence and go for Mainoo and Rice. And then I'd go Gordon on the left because I've been calling out for Gordon for ages. Foden in the middle, Palmer on the right, and Kane up top. I think that's 11, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I would pick the exact same 11. Yeah, I agree.
Really? Oh, okay, that's good.
Yeah, you can't. I agree with the back line. Like we're already having to change two players there, so you can't drop Walker. You know, we've got to have some consistency there. Mainoo, you know, let's see someone grow in midfield now. You know, we've changed more or less every game, so you know, I think he's warranted his position. And then yeah, a little bit of an attacking reshuffle as well. And yeah, just go for it. You know, just
Yeah, definitely.
let's try and create in the first half this time.
Yeah, it's going to be, I don't think it'll be an easy watch, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, so why do we do it to ourselves?
Yeah, the pain.
Right, thank you so much for joining, James.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. And if you've enjoyed this preview and you're not already liked and subscribed on the channel, then please do hit like and subscribe. And I'll see you next time for my Switzerland preview. Cheers.